Virginia to Lynchburg College. Dr. B. Shad Starks. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, I thought you had come back to Lynchburg. Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. As Associate Director of the Delaware Space Grant Consortium. And he's going to speak to us on STEM and underrepresented minority groups, a sociological perspective, and I've heard him speak before. We're in for a treat.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I guess the first thing to do is explain exactly the confusion with my title.
Sorry.
Some of the accolades here. I am now an assistant professor in the criminology and human services department at Lynchburg College. But this leads into the story of actually how I really got involved in the work in the STEM field. I am a critical criminologist, but I was trained as a sociologist. And I did my graduate work on the doctorate level at the University of Delaware. And as a graduate student, majority of my work focuses on the disproportionate representation of minorities involved in the criminal justice field at every phase, from bail, pretrial, jail, plea bargains, and especially incarceration. And throughout my graduate studies at the University of Delaware, I noticed that I continually to receive the same type theoretical explanations to why certain groups participate in criminality. As a person that's looking for applied research, I went back to my childhood and my familiar community, public school experiences, my culture, my value systems, and it kind of was incongruent with the theoretical explanations that I was hearing. So it allowed me and forced me to dig a little deeper, because it's easy to say, well, don't minorities commit more crime, so shouldn't they be a higher representation in our criminal justice system? We'll take that as a given. But the thing about that is that does not address the issues of the how and why. And I challenge myself as a graduate student, and I challenge my faculty members in my department, so let's have another conversation about how this goes about. Because we're looking for answers. It's okay to sit and have an understanding of facts, but we want to change this from a number of different perspectives so we can impact society in both ways. So while doing this, I influenced my department to give me some grant funds, and I started what was called the Minority Mentor Lecture Series. And in that series, I brought in the work of minorities, in particular, African American scholars and Hispanic and Latino scholars, to present their lens on some of these theoretical explanations on why these incarceration rates are so high, why the arrest rates are so high, which would give the majority a different lens to look through. And I realize in higher education, we can get very territorial about our ideas and perspectives. But believe it or not, the representation for African American men, Hispanic men, did not exist at the University of Delaware. And I often had conversations with some of my white male faculty members of, where can I go get a haircut in the city of New York? How often can I walk in your office and have a conversation about some of my history? I too am afforded that opportunity as a graduate student, and that should not be remiss because I am low in numbers. Took a while. They bought in. Buying in is very important. Gave me these funds and invited these speakers from other universities with this different lens, and I did not alienate the majority from having that experience because it's a breadth of knowledge that we all need to benefit from because we're going to contribute to the moral fabric of society. So the minority students get an opportunity to ask difficult questions about what is it going to be like on the job market, what have your experiences been as being the only one on the faculty, on the staff, all those cultural issues that we bring into our academic as well as our employment careers are very important. So as a graduate student, I played basketball in the gym, had the pleasure of playing with one of the physicists at the University of Delaware, and he and I began to engage in conversations about some of the work I was doing. And he stopped one day over lunch and he says, well, you know, we have this space grant here that I'm a part of. He too is one of the associate directors. And he says that we have been up and down with our recruitment of underrepresented minority groups. And I got a big smile on my face. I said, the work that I'm doing on disproportionate representation has a lot to do with structural inequality, which has a lot to do with unemployment, poverty, poor school systems, information being denied, not given the same access to resources. And I said, there's an institution like the University of Delaware that has resources, and you don't know how to get it to the folks that I'm trying to keep from being involved in crime. At that moment, fertile ground just popped up in my mind. It was like, here's an opportunity. This is what I've been working for. This is why I came to the University of Delaware, is to get this opportunity to have the voices heard of the people that have been disenfranchised the most. So what I did was, I presented a proposal to him. I said, can I help? And when I started talking about how I thought I could help them, his eyes lit up. Then we met maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks and began to strategize on how can we present this to the Delaware Space Grant Consortium in a way that we don't run anyone off, but yet we achieve the goals that both sides are trying to accomplish. That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. This conversation is very important to NASA. It's very important to society. It's very important to the STEM workforce. And I would be remiss to say that the work that Terry and Sue Ann is doing is very important to the conversation that we're going to have today about increasing the representation of underrepresented groups in STEM. So I moved from a social, a structural inequality perspective, which brings me to this research problem of increasing representation of underrepresented groups in STEM. And from a sociological perspective, we have got to understand the familiar, the community, the family, the educational experience, the culture, the gender, and the race and ethnic components when it comes to understanding structural inequality. These are very key issues that my literature often terms as sensitive issues. I need to forewarn you that acknowledging someone's gender, acknowledging someone's socioeconomic status, and acknowledging someone's race is not racist. Taking those constructs and using it against them is sexist and racist. Believe it or not, I am proud to stand before you as a black man. They aren't sensitive issues. This is my identity. This is the identity of the people that we are trying to serve, and they too are very proud of who they are and their history and their heritage. So the first thing that we have to do is acknowledge and get over the fact that we would like to keep the conversation away from each other by labeling it as sensitive issues. I mentioned that STEM is highly important, highly interested in some of this data. I just want to point out some of these disproportionate representations here that we see in the criminal justice field is happening in other areas, especially in STEM. It would make us all comfortable if we stayed in this space, but the uncomfortableness is an opportunity to grow. Some of these issues need to be addressed. Yes, sir.
I don't understand the first one. How can the total workforce be less than STEM workforce?
The workforce in STEM, is that a question that a STEM scholar should probably address, or the sociologist?
It's percentages. It's not.
Oh, it's percent.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't understand that question. Yes. It's percentages. One more. Here's a breakdown by gender. We've made some great reforms in the field of filling some of the gender gaps, but there still are some major issues. And this data comes from the United States Census Bureau 2011. So, as I said, coming from my graduate studies and earning my doctorate degree in 2012, Delaware Space Grant was fortunate. I was fortunate enough for them to bring me on to participate in increasing the numbers of underrepresented minority groups in the STEM force. So here were some of the strategies that we came up with in order to address the issues. The first issue is buying in. I spent a great deal of my time getting the faculty members to understand some of the sociological perspectives that we just discussed, and understanding that we both want the same thing, and you're in a position to assist in this. This is not a minority issue. This is an issue for all of us, and you have the power and ability and the resources to make a change. Oftentimes, again, academics, we're very territorial, so we have been leaning on a lot of our conservative ideologies and staying in a mental space as if these statistics aren't actually people's lives. So, great deal of my time was saying, hey, we got to have a truth-telling conversation about these issues if we really want change. We can't just continue to have a generic conversation and expect the population that's been disenfranchised to benefit. Second step outside our comfort zone. I mentioned it earlier. I have a PhD. I am easily comfortable teaching 2 classes a week, writing a grant, but that does not contribute to the moral fabric that I know I've been given this skill set to do. And it doesn't contribute it when we have these proportionate representations in changing the population we're here to serve. How often have some of us had minority faculty members along our journey of earning our doctorate degrees? I only had one. I had one black male throughout my 22 years of education. And I'm pretty sure some of you saying, so what does that matter? Optimism. Hope. I have a number of corny analogies. I say I dream with my eyes open. A number of minorities, they dream with their eyes closed. Some of those captions on television about being all you can be, that doesn't really apply to the same communities as it applies to the majority. Those good night kisses at night do not. Those conversations of baby, go to bed if you work hard, that doesn't apply to a number of these communities that we're talking about. Dream with your eyes open, get uncomfortable to get comfortable. Ethic of care. Some of the research that I've done in the juvenile justice system is interviewing those that see the same type person coming through our criminal justice system. Who cares? So in the Midwest, we got some data on probation officers, private defense attorneys, public defenders, judges, counselors. So who is sick and tired of seeing the same type person coming through? And from an academic perspective, who is sick and tired of having the conversation of underrepresented minority groups? It takes a lot to increase an ethic of care because the first component is selflessness. You're going to have to give up more time. You're going to have to come up with non-traditional strategies in order to reach the population that you want to serve. It is a heavy, heavy, heavy responsibility, but it's one that I know the people in this room are ready to accept. Can't just talk about those on the periphery. We got to go to the students as well. We got to understand that, hey, I'm from where you're from. I'm first generation college. I understand why an email blast or a flyer that you walk past in the hallway does not incite a riot for you to apply for a Delaware Space Grant. You don't see that as an opportunity for you. Whether it's been your family saying, boy, just go to school and graduate from high school and go get a job. Or whether it's been that teacher that doesn't understand that street language that you have survived with based on your instincts and your history is incongruent to the majority in our public school systems. So that allows them to say, you don't speak the language, how about you go into the workforce when you get out of high school? These kids are bringing some of those experiences with them. That's a part of their identity. I'm able to go and say, hey, I get it. Historically, institutions and agencies may have not seen you in the same light that could be afforded for some of these opportunities. But we're working on changing some of them. I get it. I know you're scared. It's not going to be easy. It's not easy being the only one in the room. We call it the pink elephant. But it's well worth it. We've got to crawl before we walk. Gaining that trust and rapport allows them, you can feel them oftentimes sitting up now. Like, okay. That's the conversation about their voice being represented. Oh, maybe he gets it. Maybe he gets it. Truth telling. I'm honest. I am honest. Most often, minority communities have been made promises on change, and we haven't come through with them. Disappointment, disdain, lack of trust, those are real issues. Those are real issues, and they bring them with them. So I have to tell them, and oftentimes, I know what's been told to you. I know what's been said. But I've been fortunate enough to become a bridge. University of Delaware, Delaware Space Grant, they're interested in your futures. I can give you my word that if we work together to get an application in, you're going to get a fair shot. You're going to get a fair shot. Truth telling. Academic capital. I don't know if I didn't have the access to the physicists if I would have gotten the opportunity. Playing basketball gave me the opportunity to sell and share my story. And you gotta have a person in the room that's gonna advocate on your behalf. You gotta have someone in the room that understands the plight. I tell them, your responsibility, don't be invisible. Come to class prepared. Ask more questions than your colleagues. Stop by during the office hours. If there's a lecture relevant to STEM, whether you're an engineer major and it's on chemistry, go. Don't go to the party that night. You need to be visible. If there's a lecturer, stay afterwards. Introduce yourself. Ask if it's okay if I could contact you later just for some insight. I do corny analogies again. I'm a sponge of life. Why am I here at the Mid-Atlantic region of Space Grant with a criminology degree? Because I have the ability to learn. And the more I can absorb, then the more I'm equipped to ring out. Don't be invisible. Some of the other approaches we took was an institutional approach. Historically, the University of Delaware has always had their consortium where they present the projects of the recipients from the year before at the University of Delaware. But we decided, why don't we take it to the people? Delaware State University is one of the institutions as a part of the Delaware Space Grant, and I was formerly an assistant professor in their criminal justice department. So we decided, let's go an hour south and let's set up camp and do it on their campus. What did this do? We set up tables for contact information, met them at the door, greeted them, welcomed them. We did a blast. I put flyers up. I worked with faculty members in the physics, the computer engineering, the chemistry departments, a collaborative effort that started with understanding this is an issue that can be addressed with the resources that we have. I'm not exactly sure of the numbers that we have now, Kathy, but we have a long list of students from Delaware State University that we can now contact to get them more involved after doing all this, gaining their trust and rapport. It's not easy. It is not easy. Being aware of the best approaches to the issue. You got to strategize. You have to strategize with the board directors. People are going to get offended. People are going to get upset. There's an opportunity for growth. If I am saying the things that I know need to be stated and everyone agrees with me, I didn't say the right things. Resources. Oftentimes, faculty members don't have the resources to support summer internships. Delaware State, this was an issue. We don't have the money. We would love to take some of the students, but we don't have the money. So resources, again, from that structural inequality model that I talked about, we got to increase the access to support some of those faculty members that are not at some of the major universities. We know money is always a challenge. Barriers to communication. Oftentimes, the professor is saying one thing and the student is saying the same thing, but for some reason, they don't get an understanding of what the message is. We had a young lady that was very excited. The engineering department invited me in to do presentations. The physics department did, as well as chemistry, and I went in. I guess I kind of got them motivated. They started stopping by my office. Hey, I talked with one of the physics professors, and he says he didn't have room in his lab. I said, well, when I spoke with him, he said he was open and willing to take anyone. So I brokered a meeting for the three of us, and I went to him, and he said, no, I'm sorry. I didn't have room this semester. I'd be more than happy to work with you this summer. She got a letter of recommendation, academic capital, from that same professor, from that interaction, because I understood that there was just miscommunication. It happens. Some of us will hear one side from the student, and we'll leave it as that. One more step. Did I hear you correctly, doctor? One more step. We are messengers. We can do this. We would love for the demographics to be different for the population we're trying to serve, but it doesn't take a certain race or a certain gender to deliver this information and this methodology. You have the ability to do it. Step outside of that comfort zone and say, hey, I have office hours tomorrow. Won't you stop by and come talk to me for 10, 15 minutes and just have a conversation with them. I'm going to challenge you to do more, increase that ethic of care. I don't know the STEM field. Delaware entrusted me with this opportunity. I can go in, I can help create programs, I can brainstorm. You have the substance that the kids are looking for to motivate them. I didn't know about robots on the moon. I love it, but that's as far as I can go. You have that substance to get them excited. When I got into the field of sociology, I didn't know that we were writing books on the art of basketball. And I was chasing a graduate degree. Just imagine what they do not know they could do with STEM. Often, whenever we provide opportunities to the most disenfranchised, we assume because we and our presence is there, it's going to do all the history that we have endured. So if these expectations that we have don't happen overnight, we get frustrated. You got to understand the sociological implications and saying this is a process. We are undoing a lot of pain, a lot of racism, a lot of sexism. And you got to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. Hang in there, keep fighting, believe. I'm almost done. All right, here's some of the, and it's preliminary, but here's some of the outcomes of what we've been doing from approaching these strategies in Delaware. I joined in late 2012, maybe early 2013, and we almost doubled. And then last year we did double, which is almost 4 times as much as before. But here, we got to come up with some more strategies. It's a work in progress. It's not foolproof yet. Again, understanding that these are not overnight expectations. Here are our awardees. Very big on making promises and not living up to it. Let's make sure we say you get a fair shot, we get a fair shot. They earned them. We didn't ask for our criteria to be lessened because of their ethnicity or gender. They were competitive. Getting the applications is one thing. Getting the resources is different. And by gender, sorry, but I do not have the data for the awardees But I would like to say thank you for your time to hear me out my sociology.
I wish we had time for questions, but
I'd
this
like
would be
to make
great
an-
for over lunch.
I'd like to make an important comment.
Yeah, please do.
University of Delaware last spring recognized Dr. Starks for an award for his contribution to diversity on the campus of the University of Delaware. And Delaware Space Grant is very proud to have had Chad as an associate director.